What's going on YouTube? Chronos here and welcome back to the PSO2 video. So today we're going to be doing a video I haven't done in quite some time. Doing another weapon progression video. Basically, if you haven't done these or haven't been around for these videos beforehand, essentially what we do is we kind of review the progress path that I recommend people taking when we're looking at the current state of the game. Now things have changed a bit. We have access to a couple of neat little tricks we'll talk about here in just a moment, but essentially we have a lot of skipping around nowadays. There's some weapons that we used to really go after that unless you were here at the time frame those weapons were relevant, in reality is not worth your resources to pour back into those weapons itself. Now, it doesn't mean that if you have this weapon or if you use this weapon that you've wasted your resources. In reality, depending upon the time from when you pick this weapon up, it may have been useful for you for a very, very long time, as opposed to, later on down the line. Well, shout out to my guys way back in episode 3 where we spent 10, 20, in some cases even 30 mil on Raven and Nemesis weapons that we now know that are completely useless. That if you spend that much on them now, it's be completely crazy. Either way, let's go ahead and jump into exactly what we're going to be doing. So we're over on the Arx Visiphone website. Of course, we're on the global version. We're going to hop over to the JP version just for a couple of things in a moment. But a lot of what this progression guide is going to show is possibly, I don't want to say spoilers, but it's with the looming thought that there might be something coming out in just a couple of days. Currently, it's the 1st of March, meaning we're going to be getting an update in about 2 days or so. We haven't seen anything yet on the website about this update, so we're pretty much just working on speculation mostly. We're just assuming, what could possibly be coming out with the new content, what's left for them to come out with. So we have a good chance that we know exactly what's going to be coming, but again, this is all speculation based, so take it with a grain of salt. You may want to go with what I say is going to be, guarantee versus what could be coming up, but we'll talk about that as we come to it. Anyway, let's pop over. So you guys, I will leave a link in the video description to the website itself, as I always do. You can follow along on your own, or you can check the stuff out on your own and decide and make your own decisions or make your own path. So to start things out, like we always do, we go through what you would do if you were just starting the game out, what you should be picking up, what you should be doing with all your weapons, so on and so forth. So this part's pretty easy, and of course I'm going to go through Soaring Blades because they're my favorite weapon in the game. That's what I always use. It's like my primary weapon. I always like dual wielding, so that's kind of the thing. But as far as weapons go, reality, you don't need to worry about actually upgrading any of these weapons outside of just using the stronger one. You're going to pick these up as you're doing your main missions, different weapons. So as long as it's the weapon type that you use, just equip it, get rid of the old one, vendor or whatever, and keep moving forward. The only notable mention to change is once you see 10-star weapons, you're going to turn those into X cubes. So don't vendor those, just turn them into X cubes and keep going. Use the stronger weapon of the options you have available to you. Now, beforehand, we would say don't really worry about dealing with anything until you hit around the 12-star range, 13-star range. That's actually changed. So we're going to talk about something really quick here. If you're a class that utilizes dexterity mags as your primary mag of choice, then you have access to a set of weapons almost immediately. It's insane how quickly you'll be able to get them. Essentially, the moment you can get your hands on them, you'll be able to use them and actually be fairly powerful moving forward. So classes like Bouncer, classes like Braver, and then eventually you'll be a class like Phantom. Granted, that's way down the line. By this time, you'll already have the weapon itself, but those are the classes that use dexterity mags. They will have an extra added bonus by their main mag being the one that's useful for this trick. Now, usually the way we do this, or the way we recommend this, is dexterity mag honestly is probably one of the most overpowered mags for leveling. The reason for it is it allows you to use sets of weapons and armor, which we'll talk about units in a different video, but it allows you to use these pieces of equipment very early on in your level process. Just because usually requirements for dexterity are fairly low, you're able to equip things at a very early level. For example, when I make my alternate characters, even though Etoiles don't use dex mags as their primary mag, I always give them a dex mag, rank it up, and I get the character to about level 50, and they can use all of my gear. Immediately they're able to use everything that I actually have access to, with the exception of my double saber because it requires S attack as opposed to dexterity. But not a big deal. We just grabbed a dexterity double saber and we're good to go. However, you have access to a lot of these pieces of gear very early on. So you can see the dexterity requirements of some of these weapons here. This used to be kind of like the turning point where we're like, you know what, go ahead and pick up a weapon, start upgrading it, you'll use it for something later on down the line. Other than the notable mentions of a couple things we're going to say in just a few minutes, you can actually skip everything. All of this completely skippable all the way to the bottom. 15-star. At 15-star, this is where we actually have our first stopping point. We have the Corsais. Now, these weapons come from the collection folder, the collection file. You'll talk to Prin, she's over next to Coffee in the gate area. You talk with her, she has an option for you to pick up what's called a collection file. You take that collection file and essentially it has, tasks for you to do. In the case for the Corsais, it wants you to, I believe it's kill Lumimex and complete urgent quests. The cool thing is the urgent quest, there's a current urgent quest currently that is set up that will allow you to kill tons of Lumimex. So in reality, you just do that urgent quest, the highest rarity you can do it. I mean, of course, it's not going to be the easiest being a lower level. Sometimes people aren't low levels for very long. So just get in there, get the run taken care of while you have this available to you, and you'll be able to get a weapon very, very early on. To be honest, it's kind of crazy how good this is. It is only 300 dexterity that's required to equip it, and it comes at plus 30. So you don't even have to worry about upgrading it. And honestly, as far as your intro into endgame, you're kind of set with picking up the Corsais weapon. This is where you can make some decisions based on what you, or how often you play, and what you think might be coming out in the next update. So this is kind of like your end goal for what you want to get to. I guess not end goal, the beginning goal of endgame of what you want to actually be doing. You can see these weapons are fairly powerful, and their potential is not bad either. Potential is an increase of 15% power, which we like power increases on potential. That's good. You can gain a low chance, 10%, to activate any of the following effects: reduce damage taken by 50%, reduce PP consumption by a PA by 50%, increase PP recovery when using a normal attack by 100%, or recover HP upon landing an attack by 100. Or just as 100, not 100%. So, I mean, right then and there, those are pretty solid effects. You don't have to worry about too terribly much. And you've got the base 15% damage increase. It's pretty good. So here's where you can start making your decisions and your choices. So if you were going along this process, you've probably done a couple of urgent quests. You may have done some triggers here and there. You probably pick up a few extra weapons. The other 15-star weapons in this category that are fairly useful are going to be Atlas, Trailblazer, as far are also Rivalite. I was not sure what I was trying to say there, but also Rivalite, basically. These are kind of like the quintessential 14 or 15 stars that are in this category itself. Of course, in that order of power, depending upon who you ask. So of these three weapons, Rivalite is going to be the strongest one. I mean, you also have steel weapons, which I'll be honest with you, I didn't even recommend crafting these when they were available and relevant. They require way too much to put into them, and they actually aren't definitively always the strongest choice. So I completely skipped over these. In my current setup, I'm not even using them. I didn't put any resources into them whatsoever. Even if I could afford to put resources into them, I wouldn't have. Some people have. That's up to them. That's their decision. But that's, a completely different video. You guys can look over that one, why I chose to skip steel. I completely made a video about it, so check that out on the channel. Either way, Corsais weapons, super cool. But these other weapon choices, Rivalite, these are all very powerful because of the redux potentials, increasing their damage by an extra 7%. That actually brings them up, and that's why Rivalite is so strong. It brings it up to the power of steel. Or steel, excuse me. I'm going to do that a couple of times. I apologize. It's the JP names versus the global names kind of mess me up every once in a while. So it's going to make a very powerful choice when you're comparing it against steel. I was almost about to go back to Corsais. Either way, these are all solid weapons. However, they take some resources to make. It's not the easiest thing to get together all the time. You need things like unlockers. You have to get things like titles, so on and so forth, which are going to take some time for you. So if we were looking at any of these three weapons, you were thinking to yourself, hey, look, if I had to make one, and it was going to be one to get the most value out of, which one should I make? All honesty, the Atlas. It is the weakest of the three. However, it has the most utility out of all of them. Not only does it have support for 1 through 3 as far as S-grade augments, it also has a very good potential, Unflagging Spirit, which is 18% damage increase, which is really nice. But you also survive a fatal attack once per quest and become invincible for 5 seconds. During this period, recover 10% of your maximum HP every 0.5 seconds. So you're getting your HP back. You get to be invincible for one of your attacks. So it's useful as the ability to basically stave off something that is going to kill you. For example, say you got caught by Shiva's or counter ability. You can actually spam the button to switch weapons as fast as you possibly can. Like just spam it over and over again. If you're like on keyboard and mouse, it's one of the numlock keys between 1 through 6, depending upon where it is on your palette. You can spam the button, and what happens is the game registers you swapping weapons the moment that you're free, and you're able to actually survive the hit. Super cool when you get stuck in time freezes and things like that. So very helpful for you. Or if like you're in the middle of an animation of being attacked, you can't move, you can always, of course, just spam the button again, swap weapons. Or if you foresee being murdered by the next attack that's coming up, you can swap over to it early and get that taken care of. Also, while it's not your main weapon, it actually has usefulness as utility weapons 1 through 3 use their damage slots, but they can be used for utility. I personally use an Atlas as my PP battery on Etwall, since we don't have access to a Genin weapon. That is something else we'll mention in just a moment here. And the S4 slot is fairly useful for support extension. Say you're playing like, I don't know, Phantom, and you want to have a support extension gun slash, so you can buff yourself up for 2 minutes, and then you have a 2-minute buffer on keeping your buffs active using Skydance. So makes things a little bit easier for you. Super useful weapon. If you had to pick one of the three, I would say definitely make an Atlas. No matter what, it's going to be helpful for you moving forward. I still use my Atlas to this day and still will use it even until the game is done. So notable mentions, I want to make sure I pop in and mention this too. Oh yeah, that's right. There's no double saber for this. That's why I can't use I use again on dual blades, but we'll be able to see it over on jet boots. So a couple of notable mentions as we go along with. There we go. Genin weapons. We talked about Genin weapons, how these actually work. Essentially, this is a PP battery. What happens is whenever you use whenever you use a PA or a technique, you actually reduce its consumption as well as you take damage instead. So instead of you actually using much of your PP, it uses much less PP and you take damage instead for the trade-off. Now, why is this useful? Well, you can actually add on an S grade augment, S2 and S3, that makes it so whenever you take damage, you recover PP. They do the same thing. It's 15% for each of them. They're fairly expensive, so keep that in mind. But for the S2 and S3 slot, you slap those on there, and whenever you use a PA, something quick spamming, like say for example, if you're a tech user on Nabarda Type 0, you can press it twice, and bam, you have your full PP bar almost instantly. It's kind of crazy fast. So very, very useful as a weapon itself. Also, jet boot users in general, if we can scroll up, there is a 15-star you'll probably use for quite some time. Serpent Prenzer. This is fairly strong. It makes it so your jet sweep kick is faster and has a bigger AoE on it. So a 15-star that you probably will still hold on to moving all the way towards the end of the game itself. There's also like some weird weapon swapping that you can do to maintain the actual, the speed of the jet sweep kick as well as the enhanced area of effect of it, while being able to use something stronger that we'll talk about in just a little bit. For Harmonizers, this is kind of something that you will always have with you as a what's what I'm looking for, as a summoner. The Rycro staff. I'm not gonna go into the specific of the Rycro staff. We talked about it in an earlier video, but essentially it's one of the best weapons you can have, like one of the best harmonizers you can have in the entire game. As a summoner, you will want one, you will use one, you will keep one with you forever. Its effect is just very, very strong and it has a redux potential, so I highly recommend picking that up. That's really it for the honorable mentions. We're going to talk now about the weapon that I mentioned that might be coming. So let's pop over there. So we're over on the JP wiki at the moment. Let me scroll up just a tad. No, this is actually the perfect spot for it. Never mind. What am I thinking? So we have the Dark Banisher Air and the Lightweaver Crass. So this is a series of weapons that we most likely will be getting after the update. They come from a new boss that we'll be seeing fairly soon. And these weapons are very powerful. Essentially, this is going to be our best weapon in the game. This is kind of close. Like, this is basically, I don't say undeniably your best in slot weapon, because there are some classes that prefer a different weapon choice, but very, very strong and very easy to get a hold of. Essentially, you get one of these for very little minimal effort as far as doing the urgent quest. Essentially, you can do this urgent quest, I think, like, what, 2-3 times on the highest difficulty, and bam, you'll have enough to pick up one of these weapons. They're very, very easy to come by. They're easy 15-star. So a lot of people are actually waiting to play certain classes until AR comes out, because it'll be so easy for them to pick up an AR. But you'll be wanting this weapon anyway, moving towards your best weapon in the game. And it's S1 through S4 compatible. I don't have to go over that with you guys. You know how useful that actually is, as well as its potential. So its potential is to boost power by 12%, and it reduces PP consumption by 20%, while also recovering 20 PP every 10 seconds. That actually ends up being pretty nice for your PP economy. So even in situations where you think, like, you're not going to recover PP, if you're using a class or using something that says, you don't recover PP while you're attacking, this still works and still procs in. So super, super nice, super beneficial, super helpful. And of course, it goes towards our best weapon in the game, Lightweaver Crass. So Lightweaver Crass basically has the same effect as before, so this still works. However, when you normal attack, I believe, 3 times, you boost your damage up to 18.7%. So you just get a huge damage buff and reduce damage taken by 30%, and also negates knockback. So it does quite a few things. And this does change the potential itself, meaning that first potential from the air does not function, does not work, while the effect changes into Light Weaving Guardian. So keep that in mind. It does add the S5 slot into it, so that's super cool. S5s are very, very nice. They usually are, unique effects that don't change the way you play, but augment your playstyle and make you very strong. So super useful there. I don't want to mention this like an honorable mention. I feel like it kind of has to be an honorable mention, really. But another weapon that's really useful for us is going to be the Flexio Weapons. The Flexio Weapons you're going to get from, what is it? I guess it's considered CM3. Though depending on who you ask, it's actually CM4. Either way, it comes from the new challenge mode. In challenge mode, once you complete it, there are actually a series of different titles that you can get from that challenge mode. One of them being just completed all the way through. You get yourself a Flexio weapon. This weapon can be swapped over at Zig for basically no cost, and it's a fairly powerful weapon itself. Got quite a bit of base damage as well as a decent potential. Its potential does 13% increased damage, and upon striking with an attack, you increase your power by an additional 8%, bringing you up to 21. Reduce damage taken by 20%, and you increase your maximum PP by 100 for 20 seconds. So anyone who has a weapon that drains a ton of PP, you don't have really the PP pool to support it. This can be very beneficial as, maybe an off weapon to use for a while, so on and so forth. And this effect regenerates after dealing 1.5 million damage, which at this point of the game, not that difficult to do. You can do fairly quickly. So just keep that in mind. Super powerful weapon. Awesome choice of weapon itself to have access to. So that really kind of covers everything when it comes down to these weapons. Fluxio and Lightweaver are going to be our two weapons that we're going to look at. Lightweaver mostly, but Fluxio for people who don't really have a great Lightweaver. Classes, I think of that. I think of like Ranger. When it comes to rifle, spamming normal attacks isn't exactly something you want to do on Ranger. So maybe a Flexio weapon might be a better choice for you in that situation itself, and tons of PP to go ahead and just drain, as well as, you deal quite a bit of damage anyway. So these weapons are fairly nice, they're fairly powerful, and they're good choices to keep in mind moving forward. And that's really about it. Everything else is kind of like just, in honorable mentions. There are other options that are available to you. I would recommend reading through them, checking them out, but these are your overall goals. This is basically going to be the end of your weapon progression when it comes to Phantasy Star Online 2. This is it. This is what we're going for. This is our end goal, our ultimate goal of what we want. So strap in, get ready. It's coming, hopefully in 2 days, but we'll have to see. Anyway, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to toss them in the comments below. As always, like on the video is much appreciated and absolves you half your ad block. The other half is absolved by subscribing. Both are completely free and they do help me out a ton. If you want to keep up with content as it goes live, make sure to click on the bell icon to be notified of videos, as well as community posts when those go up. Or join us over on Discord or follow me over on Twitter for notifications via those two avenues. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Peace out.